Some truths are too heavy to carry alone. My name is Alex, I'm 31 years old, and for 2 years, I carried a secret that could destroy my family. I saw something I shouldn't have seen, learned something that would change my cousin's life forever. The question that tormented me every night was, when you discover that someone you love is living a lie, do you have the right or the obligation to tell the truth? Today, going to share with you the most difficult decision I've ever had to make, and the devastating consequences it brought to all of us. I'm telling this story because I genuinely don't know if I did the right thing. Half my family thinks I'm a hero for speaking up. The other half thinks I'm a monster who destroyed an innocent child's life for no good reason. Some days I think I saved my cousin from years of deception. Other days I wonder if ignorance really would have been bliss. This isn't just about family drama or infidelity. This is about the weight of truth, the complexity of loyalty, and what happens when doing the right thing feels absolutely wrong. It's about a decision that haunts me every single day, even though I'd probably make the same choice again. It was a humid Saturday evening in July, 2 years ago. I was living in Miami at the time, working as a software engineer for a tech startup. My cousin Danny had invited me to a barbecue at his house in Coral Gables to celebrate his son Tyler's 4th birthday. Danny and I had always been close, more like brothers than cousins. We're only 6 months apart in age, grew up 3 blocks from each other, and had been each other's best man at our respective weddings. His wife Sarah had become like a sister to me over the 8 years they'd been together. The party was winding down around 9 p.m. Most of the guests had left, and I was helping Danny clean up the backyard while Sarah put Tyler to bed. I needed to use the bathroom, so I went inside through the sliding glass door that led to their kitchen. That's when I heard Sarah on the phone in the living room, talking in a hushed, urgent tone that immediately caught my attention. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but her voice carried in the quiet house, and what I heard made my blood run cold. She was talking to someone about Tyler, about how he was getting older and starting to look more like his real father. She mentioned being worried that Danny might notice the resemblance, especially around the eyes and the dimpled chin. Then she said something that stopped my heart. She told whoever was on the other end that they needed to be more careful about spending time around Tyler because people were already starting to comment on how much the child looked like him. I stood frozen in that hallway, realizing I just learned that my cousin's son might not actually be his biological child. The conversation continued for a few more minutes, with Sarah discussing how to handle the situation and expressing fear about Danny finding out the truth. When I finally made it to the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror, trying to process what I'd just heard. Tyler, the little boy I'd watched grow up, who called me Uncle Alex and ran to me with excitement every time he saw me, might not be Danny's son. The worst part was that I immediately knew who Sarah must have been talking to. My mind went straight to Marcus, Sarah's former coworker who'd been at several family gatherings over the past few years. I'd always thought their friendship seemed a bit too close, but Danny had never expressed any concerns, and I'd figured I was being paranoid. But now, thinking about Marcus and Tyler side by side, the resemblance was unmistakable. They had the same dark eyes, the same dimpled chin, the same thick black hair, features that neither Danny nor Sarah possessed. To understand why this discovery hit me so hard, you need to know about my relationship with Danny. We weren't just cousins, we were each other's closest confidants, the brothers neither of us had growing up. Danny's parents had divorced when he was 12. And he'd spent most of his teenage years at our house while his mom worked double shifts to support them. We'd shared a bedroom for 3 years, stayed up late talking about our dreams, our fears, our plans for the future. When Danny met Sarah at a company holiday party 6 years ago, I was the first person he called to tell me he'd met the woman he was going to marry. When they started having fertility issues after 2 years of trying for a baby, I was the one who drove him to doctor's appointments when Sarah couldn't take time off work. I'll never forget the phone call I got from Danny when Sarah finally got pregnant. He was crying with joy, telling me how they'd almost given up hope, how this baby was going to be their miracle. He talked about all the things he wanted to teach his son, all the traditions he wanted to pass down, how becoming a father was going to be the greatest achievement of his life. When Tyler was born, Danny was transformed. This man who'd been career-focused and somewhat selfish became completely devoted to his child. He changed diapers without complaint, got up for middle-of-the-night feedings, documented every milestone with the enthusiasm of a professional photographer. Danny wasn't just a good father, he was an exceptional one. He coached Tyler's little league team, built elaborate blanket forts in the living room, spent hours teaching him to ride a bike and tie his shoes. Their bond was beautiful and genuine, something that brought joy to everyone who witnessed it. But now, I was sitting on information that could destroy that bond forever. What made it worse was that I genuinely liked Sarah. She'd always been kind to me, welcoming me into their family activities, remembering my birthday, asking about my job and my relationships. She seemed like a devoted wife and mother, someone who made Danny happy in ways I'd never seen before. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. How could someone who appeared to love her family so much be living such a fundamental lie? In the days following Tyler's birthday party, I found myself analyzing every interaction I'd had with Sarah over the years, looking for signs of deception I might have missed. What troubled me was that there weren't many obvious red flags. Sarah had always seemed genuinely invested in her marriage and family. She talked about Danny with affection, supported his career goals, and appeared to be a devoted mother to Tyler. But as I thought more carefully, I started remembering small things that hadn't seemed significant at the time. There had been periods when Sarah was unusually secretive about her phone, quickly closing text messages when others were around. She'd had several girls' nights out that seemed to happen more frequently than her female friendships would suggest. I also remembered a conversation from about a year earlier where Sarah had made an odd comment about genetics. We'd been discussing how Tyler had inherited certain traits, and she'd seemed unusually nervous about the topic, quickly changing the subject when Danny started talking about family resemblances. The more I analyzed her behavior, the more I realized that Sarah had been managing the secret for Tyler's entire life. She'd been looking Danny in the eye every day for over 4 years, accepting his love and devotion, watching him bond with the child who might not be his biological son, and saying nothing. What kind of person could maintain that level of deception? What kind of person could watch someone they claimed to love invest their heart and soul into fatherhood based on a lie? But then I'd remember Tyler innocent, sweet Tyler who adored the man he knew as his father. Tyler who had Danny's laugh even if he didn't have his genes, who had learned Danny's mannerisms and shared his interests because that's what children do with their parents. The thought of that little boy losing the only father he'd ever known, of his world being shattered by adult mistakes he had no part in making, was almost unbearable. What do you think about the situation I found myself in? When you discover a secret that could destroy a family, do you have a moral obligation to speak up? Or is protecting everyone's current happiness more important than revealing the truth? The weeks following Tyler's birthday party were some of the most difficult of my life. I found myself unable to act normal around Danny and Sarah, constantly watching for more signs of deception, analyzing every word and gesture for hidden meaning. Family gatherings became torture. Watching Danny interact with Tyler, seeing the pure love and pride in his eyes, knowing that his entire understanding of his family might be based on a lie, it was emotionally devastating. I tried to convince myself that maybe I'd misunderstood the phone conversation. Maybe Sarah had been talking about something else entirely. Maybe the resemblance between Tyler and Marcus was just coincidence. People always say children look like random people. Maybe I was seeing patterns that weren't really there. But deep down, I knew what I'd heard. The pieces fit too perfectly. And Sarah's nervous behavior around discussions of genetics and family resemblance suddenly made complete sense. I considered confronting Sarah directly, giving her a chance to tell Danny the truth herself. But what if I was wrong? What if I was about to destroy a marriage based on a misunderstood phone conversation? What if there was some explanation I hadn't considered? I also thought about staying silent permanently. Danny seemed happy. Tyler was thriving. Sarah appeared to be a good wife and mother, regardless of her past mistakes. Maybe the truth would cause more harm than good. Maybe some secrets were meant to be kept. But every time I saw Danny, felt like I was complicit in the deception. When he talked about Tyler's future, about the college fund he was building, about the family traditions he wanted to pass down, I felt sick knowing that he might be pouring his heart into a relationship built on lies. The guilt was eating me alive. I lost weight, had trouble sleeping, and found it difficult to concentrate at work. My own relationship suffered because I was constantly distracted by this moral dilemma I couldn't resolve. I want to pause here and thank everyone who's still watching. I know the story is heavy, and I appreciate you staying with me through these difficult revelations. The hardest part of the story is still coming, and I really need your perspective on whether I made the right choice. What made the situation even more heartbreaking was Tyler himself. As he grew older, his resemblance to Marcus became more pronounced, but his personality and mannerisms were pure Danny. He'd inherited his father's sense of humor, his love of baseball, his methodical approach to building with Legos. Tyler worshipped Danny in the way that little boys worship their fathers. He wanted to wear the same clothes, eat the same foods, and followed Danny around the house helping with projects he was too young to actually assist with. Their bedtime routine included Danny reading stories in different character voices, and Tyler's delighted laughter could be heard throughout the house. The bond between them was real and beautiful regardless of biology. Danny wasn't just Tyler's legal father, he was his dad in every way that mattered. He was the one who kissed scraped knees, taught Tyler to throw a baseball, and stayed up all night when the boy had fever. But I also couldn't stop thinking about Danny's right to know the truth about his own life. If Tyler wasn't his biological son, didn't Danny have the right to make informed decisions about his future? What about medical history? What about the possibility that Tyler's real father might want to be involved in his life someday? I kept imagining scenarios where the truth would come out eventually. DNA tests were becoming more common and affordable. What if Tyler needed a medical procedure that required genetic information? What if he decided to do one of those ancestry tests when he got older? What if Marcus decided he wanted a relationship with his potential son? The longer the secret continued, the more devastating the eventual revelation would be. Tyler was already forming concrete memories and strong attachments. Danny was deepening his emotional investment every day. The truth would be painful now, but it would be catastrophic later. Yet I also couldn't escape the image of Tyler's confused, hurt face if his world suddenly fell apart. He was an innocent child who would pay the price for adult decisions he'd had no part in making. The breaking point came during Danny's 32nd birthday party, almost 2 years after I'd overheard that devastating phone conversation. The party was at a local restaurant, and extended family had come from out of state to celebrate. Marcus was there, which wasn't unusual since he'd become a regular fixture at family gatherings over the years. But watching him interact with Tyler that night was like seeing the truth in high definition. Tyler ran to Marcus with the same enthusiasm he showed Danny, climbing into his lap and showing him drawings he'd made at school. Marcus responded with a level of interest and affection that seemed to go beyond casual family friend. He knew details about Tyler's preferences and personality that seemed oddly intimate for someone who supposedly saw him only at occasional gatherings. The physical resemblance was now undeniable. They had the same smile, the same gestures, the same way of tilting their heads when they were thinking. Several family members made comments about how much Tyler looked like Marcus, joking about family resemblances and genetics in ways that made Sarah visibly uncomfortable. But the moment that sealed my decision happened near the end of the evening. Danny was talking to our uncle about his plans for Tyler's college education, discussing the savings account he'd been building since Tyler was born. He talked about wanting to give his son opportunities he'd never had, about working extra hours to ensure Tyler would never have to worry about student loans. Meanwhile, across the room, I watched Marcus give Tyler his business card, a child who couldn't even read yet, and tell him to keep it safe because it was special. When Tyler asked why, Marcus said it was a secret between them. That interaction made my stomach turn. Whether Marcus was Tyler's biological father or not, he was clearly maintaining some kind of inappropriate special relationship with the young child, encouraging secrets from his parents. That crossed a line that went beyond my concerns about Danny's right to know the truth. That night, I made the decision that would change everything. I was going to tell Danny what I'd learned. I called Danny the following Tuesday and asked if we could meet for lunch. I told him I had something important to discuss, something that couldn't wait and couldn't be talked about over the phone. We met at our usual spot, a quiet diner where we'd had countless conversations over the years. Danny could tell something was seriously wrong from my demeanor. He asked if I was sick, if I'd lost my job, if something had happened to my parents. Telling him was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I started by explaining that I'd overheard something 2 years earlier that had been eating at me ever since. I told him about the phone conversation, about the resemblance I'd noticed between Tyler and Marcus, about the interaction I'd witnessed at his birthday party. Danny's reaction was immediate and intense. His face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally a kind of hollow shock that was painful to witness. He didn't want to believe what I was telling him. He pointed out that Tyler had his mannerisms, his interests, his laugh. He reminded me of how long he and Sarah had tried to conceive, how excited they'd both been about the pregnancy. He suggested that I might be misinterpreting innocent interactions and coincidental resemblances, but I could see in his eyes that part of him was already connecting dots he'd previously ignored. He mentioned that Sarah had been secretive about her phone lately, that she'd seemed nervous about some topics, that she discouraged him from doing a family ancestry DNA test Tyler had asked about. The conversation lasted 3 hours. Danny went through denial, anger, bargaining, and what looked like the beginning of acceptance. By the end, he was asking me what I thought he should do with this information. I told him that I didn't know, that I'd struggled with the same question for 2 years. But I also said that I thought he deserved to know the truth about his own life, and that Tyler deserved to know the truth about his parentage before he got older and the revelation became even more traumatic. Danny thanked me for telling him, even though I could see that part of him hated me for destroying his peace of mind. We agreed that he needed time to process this information and decide how to proceed. 2 weeks later, he confronted Sarah. When Danny confronted Sarah with what I'd told him, the reaction was explosive in ways I never could have predicted. Sarah initially denied everything, accusing both Danny and me of paranoid delusions and character assassination. But when Danny presented specific details about the phone conversation I overheard and demanded a paternity test, Sarah's story began to change. First, she admitted to an emotional affair with Marcus, but insisted it had never been physical. Then she admitted to a physical relationship, but claimed it had ended before Tyler's conception. Finally, faced with the timeline and Danny's unwillingness to let the matter drop, she admitted that Tyler might not be Danny's biological son. The revelation destroyed Danny emotionally. The man I'd known as confident and optimistic became depressed and withdrawn. He moved out of the family home and stayed with me for 3 weeks while trying to process the magnitude of Sarah's betrayal. But the family drama was just beginning. When word of the situation spread to our extended family, the reactions were sharply divided and intensely emotional. Some family members supported Danny completely, viewing Sarah as a manipulative liar who'd stolen years of his life and love under false pretenses. They praised me for having the courage to speak up and save Danny from continuing to live a lie. Others were furious with me for destroying a happy family over suspicions and rumors. They pointed out that Danny had been a loving, devoted father regardless of biology, and that Tyler was the one who would suffer most from this revelation. They accused me of being jealous of Danny's happiness or having some other ulterior motive for wanting to destroy his marriage. Sarah's family, understandably, went into full defensive mode. They portrayed Danny as a cruel man who was abandoning his son over technicalities, and they painted me as a troublemaker who'd inserted myself into a marriage that was none of my business. The division extended beyond just opinions. Family gatherings became impossible because various relatives refused to be in the same room with each other. Holiday celebrations were canceled. Decades-old relationships were destroyed over disagreements about my decision to reveal the truth. Tyler, caught in the middle of this adult chaos, was confused and heartbroken. His parents were fighting constantly, his father had moved out, and family gatherings that had once been sources of joy and stability had become sources of tension and conflict. Danny ultimately decided to get a paternity test, despite Sarah's pleas that it would only cause more pain. The results confirmed what we'd all suspected. Tyler was not Danny's biological child. The DNA test also revealed what I'd suspected about Marcus being the biological father. When confronted with the evidence, Marcus admitted to the affair and acknowledged that he'd suspected Tyler might be his son for years. What followed was a legal and emotional nightmare. Danny filed for divorce and initially sought to terminate his parental rights and responsibilities, arguing that his entire relationship with Tyler had been based on fraud. Sarah fought for child support, claiming that Danny had bonded with Tyler and couldn't abandon him now regardless of biology. Marcus, meanwhile, expressed interest in having a relationship with Tyler, but had no legal standing since he wasn't on the birth certificate and had never been married to Sarah. The legal proceedings were ugly and public in ways that devastated everyone involved. Local newspapers picked up the story because of the unusual custody circumstances. Tyler, now 6 years old, was subjected to interviews with child psychologists and had to testify about his relationships with the various adults in his life. Watching this innocent child navigate questions about paternity and family relationships that no 6-year-old should have to understand was heartbreaking. Tyler kept asking when Danny was coming home, when the family would be together again, why everyone was so angry all the time. The courts ultimately ruled that Danny, having acted as Tyler's father for 6 years, had established parental rights and responsibilities that couldn't be terminated simply due to lack of biological connection. He was ordered to pay child support, but was granted visitation rights that he chose not to exercise. Marcus was granted limited supervised visitation as Tyler's biological father, but Tyler was confused and resistant to building a relationship with someone he barely knew. The entire process took 18 months and cost everyone involved tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. More importantly, it destroyed Tyler's sense of family stability and left him with trust issues that would likely affect him for years to come. It's been 6 months since the legal proceedings ended, and I'm still dealing with the consequences of my decision to tell Danny the truth. The fallout has been more extensive and painful than I ever imagined possible. Danny and I barely speak anymore. He thanked me once for saving him from continuing to live a lie, but our relationship has never recovered from the trauma of that revelation. He's moved to another state, started over with a new job and new friends, and seems determined to put this entire chapter of his life behind him. He's also completely cut contact with Tyler, despite having legal visitation rights. He says it's too painful to maintain a relationship with a child who reminds him daily of his ex-wife's betrayal. I understand his perspective, but watching Tyler ask about his dad is devastating. Tyler is struggling emotionally and academically. He's in therapy, but he's exhibiting behavioral problems and seems to blame himself for his father's absence. Sarah tells me he asks constantly why Danny doesn't love him anymore, and she doesn't know how to explain adult complexities to a 6-year-old mind. Marcus has been trying to build a relationship with Tyler, but it's awkward and forced. Tyler doesn't understand why this man who used to be just a family friend is now supposed to be his father, and Marcus doesn't have the patience or experience to navigate the complicated emotions involved. Sarah has struggled financially as a single mother, especially with the legal bills from the divorce and custody proceedings. She's had to move to a smaller apartment and take on additional work, which means Tyler spends more time in daycare and after-school programs. My extended family remains divided. Some relatives have thanked me privately for having the courage to speak up. Others have made it clear that I'm no longer welcome at family gatherings because my presence creates too much tension. The guilt is overwhelming some days. I look at Tyler's sad little face and wonder if I destroyed his happiness to satisfy my own sense of moral righteousness. I wonder if Danny would have been better off never knowing the truth, if he could have lived his entire life as a happy, devoted father without ever learning about Sarah's deception. But then I remember Marcus giving Tyler his business card and encouraging secrets. I remember thinking about what would happen when Tyler got older and the truth eventually came out anyway. I remember Danny's right to make informed decisions about his own life and future. So there it is, my story in all its messy, painful reality. Am I the a-hole for telling my cousin that his son might not be his? Or did I do the right thing by revealing a truth that everyone deserved to know, even though it destroyed a family in the process? I've been living with this decision for over 2 years now, and I still don't know if I made the right choice. Some days, I think I saved Danny from years of additional deception and gave Tyler a chance to know his biological father. Other days, I think I destroyed an innocent child's happiness to satisfy my own moral compass. I genuinely want to know what you think. Have you ever discovered a secret that could destroy someone you love? How do you balance loyalty to family with commitment to truth? Is there ever a situation where ignorance really is bliss? Please share your honest thoughts in the comments below. I've been carrying the weight of this decision alone for too long, and I need to know if others would have made the same choice in my position. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to hear more real-life moral dilemmas that don't have easy answers. Sometimes doing the right thing feels absolutely wrong, and maybe that's something we all need to talk about more openly. And if you want to hear another story that will challenge everything you think you know about family loyalty and moral obligations, check out the video I'm recommending next. Am I the a-hole for not telling my sister that her husband is planning to leave her? Trust me, that one will leave you questioning every assumption you have about truth and loyalty. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes the heaviest burdens are the ones we carry in silence.